Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Beth Gilligan. I'm Director of Development and Marketing at the Coolidge Corner Theater. We are thrilled to be presenting this special Q&A for the film Test Pattern. It is playing now in our virtual screening room, so if you haven't already, please check that out. Coolidge.org. Not only are you going to see an incredible film, but anytime you purchase a ticket at our virtual screening room, you're supporting our nonprofit organization during what has been a pretty challenging time, coming upon our year anniversary of having our doors closed. But one of the great things is we've been able to connect with you through showing some of these amazing films. So tonight we have a very special event. We're going to be joined by the filmmaker, Shatara Michelle Ford, the two incredible actors from the film, lead actors Brittany S. Hall and Will Brill, and we have our moderator, Ira Madison III. Again, this is an incredible debut feature by Shatara, and we look forward to the discussion. So I'll have Ira take it from there. Thank you so
much. Great. Hi, Shatara. Hi, Will. Hi, Brittany.
Hi.
I'm so excited to see everything that's happening with this movie for you, to be honest. I saw it years ago. A different version of it. I guess why don't we talk about your journey to first making Test Pattern to now the version that people have seen that was written up in the New York Times a few days ago.
And as of 20 minutes ago, from Richard Brody in The New Yorker.
Okay, come through, Richard Brody.
Yes. So 3.5 years ago, I was doing a lot of thinking around our current conversations that we're having about consent and sexual assault. This is, right when it was right before the whole Weinstein thing broke and Me Too really got going, but we had spent a year talking about Bill Cosby. There were kind of additional rumblings about just, women's body autonomy and the protections around Planned Parenthood because of our then new president, who is, also an accused sexual predator. So I don't know. I've kept, and then there were all these conversations about rape kits and the backlog. And I don't know. So I was thinking about all these things, and I was kind of frustrated with like the ways in which we're kind of limiting ourselves with those conversations. One, on just the fact that we tended to kind of center the experiences of white women in particular. But more than that, we also were kind of having conversations that sat in extremes, and I think that what's easy to understand but isn't often talked about with sexual assault is that it's a spectrum, and there's the low level kind of harassment advances that are unwanted all the way up to bona fide rape, and all of those things are not okay. There are different degrees of not okay, but they're not okay. And we're spending a lot of time talking about the extremes when a lot of the gray area stuff, the stuff that I think has a lot more to do with power and how we talk about consent, wasn't really being addressed. And so, I just kind of started writing a script that ended up at like 35 pages, but was a feature. I remembered just recently that I actually owe a lot of credit to David Lowery for that. I had seen A Ghost Story maybe 6 months prior to me writing Test Pattern. And I'd read about how, A Ghost Story was, 20 or 30 some odd pages. And there's a lot of space in that film. Mm-hmm. And I think I was influenced by the space and forgot that kind of that's, where it was coming from. But yeah, I made this 35-page script that was a feature and gave it to my producer, Pinchin Liu, who was like, yep, this seems like the thing that we should make. And in November of 2017, yeah, we went into pre-production and started trying to find cast,
Mhm.
and ended up finding those two. I think it was like February 2018.
I think it was like February.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I
That
don't know.
is so that's so interesting to me, actually. I want to hear more about the idea of writing a film, especially as a screenwriter, like writing a film that is that length, and knowing, I guess, when you're directing it as well, like the space in it, and knowing that, it is a feature, because I feel like that in the ghost story situation is unusual, unless, I guess, you're making it yourself, right?
Well, and I was, right?
Yeah.
I think at that point I was pretty fed up with trying to ask people for money to help me get something specific that I wanted done that I know isn't typical. So I was kind of like, at this point, I'm writing something for me to figure out how to execute for me right now. If somebody wants to ride the train, great, but I doubt that they will. So, I did pass around the script to financiers and producers, and they were all like, oh, cool, I don't get it. Or, why don't you try it and come back to me? But nobody was really like jumping on it, which, gave me the license to even, commit to this way of doing it, like more intensely, properly. Another filmmaker I'm really influenced by is Mike Leigh. And something that I really love about Mike Leigh is that, and this is like my dream scenario, right? Of
Mhm.
having a group of actors who I really enjoyed working with, and having an idea for a story, but not having it fully drawn out, just kind of an idea of a world and some conflicts, and build that with the actors that I love working with. And we create our characters together. We kind of flesh out the story together. We take months to do this. We really live in these characters and live in this world, and then we go do it. So I was trying to create a, tiny version of that with Test Pattern by giving ourselves a blueprint, for Will and Brittany to kind of stretch out and live in. I also am always trying to set myself up for surprises. My most favorite thing about being a director is being surprised by the people I work with, because the whole point is, I'm putting together like a team of folks who are incredibly talented in the thing that they do. And I'm not gonna know fully what's gonna come out of that. And it's just like such a joy, and it's so fun. And so, yeah, I created the space in the script primarily so Will and Brittany could spend a whole bunch of time surprising me.
Mhm.
And it also, I think, makes my job easier, especially because I'm such a technical director. You know, the visual aspects of the film, the way that the camera moves is incredibly important to me. And that's hard to balance, like studying, performance on top of also making sure that the shots look right. And so if I can give some of that responsibility to the actors, I'm going to do that. So my job on set turned more into, being bullshit detector, making sure that the choices that they did make, the surprises that they did bring me, were consistent with the characters that, we'd spent a lot of time getting to know. And, that also consisted in me challenging them when I felt like, maybe they weren't committing to that fully. But, I tried my best to never be prescriptive. I don't know, you guys can tell me if I ever was, but I'd like to think of myself as someone who is not prescriptive in that way.
Brittany, I'd love to ask you first then too about what Chatara was just talking about. What was it like, receiving the script, getting involved with the project, and where did you find spaces, to sort of have fun with it and surprise Chatara in the way that she gave you an opportunity to?
Wow. Where did I start? So honestly, coming on board of like this whole experience was pretty magical for me in particular. It just felt very like a God sent moment. And working with Chatara, I learned so much from her. one thing I'm grateful for in the whole experience is her trust with me. And I feel like she really trusted Will and I with her baby, and the way that she directed us, just the way that she handled the whole set, it just showed like how much she trusted her team, like the people that she brought on board. She really, really trusted them, and she knew what she wanted. And I really honestly feel like she was so nurturing through the process. I don't know if Shatara knows how nurturing she is, but she's very like nurturing. And for me, like, this, when I read the script, I believe it was like, what, 30 pages, Shatara, when you sent it to me the first time? And I just remember feeling like, oh, wow. And because the story hit so close to home for me, it also made me think about a lot of things I went through in my own life. But in order to tell Renisha's story, I had to sit my own shit aside and like really focus on the story that Shatara wanted to tell. And so that took a lot of discipline. But it also like, it was like a Pandora's box, I would say, for me, in a sense. So the whole experience, as magical as it was, it really like stretched me in, as not just as an artist, but as a person.
Brittany, do you remember, when we first talked? Like, I can't forget it because it was actually, it was really unsettling, but also very confirming. But, you sat down, you listened to me just go on about this project. I'm sure that was really fun. But I couldn't really tell anything. Like, I couldn't read your face. I couldn't get any sense of like what you thought of this. And in my head, I was like, oh, she's just being really nice and she's gonna, take this coffee and go home and like that's it. And she hates the script. And then so when I finally asked you what you thought, you burst into tears.
I did.
You just started crying. And then I was like, oh my God, I think I offended her. I don't know what I did. And you were like, this just hits close to home. And it made me think about a lot of stuff. And I brought up a lot of stuff. And in that moment, it was really intimidating because I was like, well, that's a big responsibility to have to like carry, a project with a person who's, having to walk through this personally. But also I thought it was a really beautiful opportunity to kind of like work through some of that experience as Renisha.
Well, I have the same question for you that I asked Brittany. First receiving this project, joining, and then what you were able to, sort of discover within those moments in the script to surprise yourself and Shatara.
Sure. I remember the first time I heard about the project was from Shatara, my mutual friend, Caroline Bloom, who is in the film as one of Renisha's friends in that second scene at the bar. Caroline mentioned the thing to me, and she said Shatara's looking for a person to play this role. And Shatara and I met, and Shatara told me about the story of it, and I sort of I had a hard time believing that accessing how lucky I felt to that it felt like I was going to be trusted with this kind of story. It felt like work that I wanted to be doing, but also that was very, very scary and intimidating to play this kind of character and to do this and to live inside this kind of relationship. But again, as Brittany was saying, Shatara's trust in herself and in our potential to create this thing was very empowering. And then we also had a very cool opportunity, the three of us, Brittany, Shatara, and I, to get together and discover these people all together. We improvised moments of this relationship that do not appear in the film. And that was terrifying and breathtaking, really scary work that I've never done before. And then you know, to be totally honest, on set there were times where there were times when I did not like understand the perspective and the import of the thing that we were creating, and Shatara very patiently talked me through a lot of it. We had a lot of like very rich and sometimes painful conversations throughout production, but in this way that like even when we were disagreeing, I felt like it was in that way that, you know, if somebody cared less, they would ignore it, and it just felt like Shatara was coming from a place of such care that I think we all felt really safe to be creating this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you're muted, Shatara.
Sorry about that. I said I forgot about that, but you're very right. And something I've been thinking about a lot, you know, as I've been talking to folks about the movie and over the last week is, you know, how little I give the audience. And I'm like, well, duh, because I trust the audience. Audience is smart.
Yeah.
But that goes to y'all too. Like, you know, I invited you to do this for a reason. You got hired for a reason. And it's because I know you can do it. I see it. I know you can. And so when there are moments where I think, you know, Will, you didn't, or Brittany, you didn't think you could do it, it was just kind of like, yes, you can, go do it. Like, I know you can. Like, whatever this is, you can, it'll be fine.
I would love to hear more about you know, that moment you mentioned, Will, you know, about like the perspective and Shatara helping you sort of like understand that. Shatara, what do you think was helpful in working, you know, with Will on getting through the nuances of the script, and how did you feel, I guess, comfortable to the point where you realized that like they were things that you could explain and they weren't things that maybe were missing from the script, etc.?
Well, again, then I think it goes back to the trust thing. I think we're all used to a way of working outside of this film, before this film, where
Mm-hmm.
we're not given opportunities to trust our own aptitudes, like across the board. You know, quite a few of, actually all of our heads of department were completely qualified to do that job, but had never been given the opportunity to run, you know, that section of their department before. And that's because I trusted them to do it. I think that for, you know, the actors, for Will and Brittany, you know, I was asking them to participate in a set experience that isn't typical for an indie film of that budget level or with that time. You know, I was requiring them to be with these characters all day, every day, which is hard when the subject matter is hard. But I thought it was necessary because I think there's something, I think surprises come also with energy and momentum. And I was so worried about kind of like stopping and starting and having this kind of like staggered experience because the subject matter, because the stuff is so dark on some level. I think naturally, like, we as human beings want to like get out of that as soon as possible, especially if it's not necessary to be in. And so I knew I was asking for quite a lot, but it was like beyond necessary. It was like so necessary. It was imperative that they did that. So I think that's the point of view thing that's hard to sit with. The fact that like I have to be in this all the time by choice. And the choice is what's going to lead me to the, performance that will satisfy the project. I think that is really hard. And I know for both of them in our separate kind of, challenges with each other, it was always related to staying in it.
Mhm.
No one wanted to stay in it. I didn't want to stay in it. I was so, I like needed them to stay in it, so I stayed in it. But yeah. Would
Mhm.
you say that's right, guys? I think so. That's how I felt, at least.
You know what I just thought about, to add to what Will was saying about when he didn't understand some things. I remember in Shatara, there was this moment with the scene where Drew's character takes me home. And I remember being like, well, why would she get in a car with him? And like, I couldn't have an understanding. And then like, you sat with me and you're so great at communication, but you sat with me and talked to me about it. And you just really helped me gain clarity of Renisha's perspective. But what you also taught me was not protecting my characters, because me, Brittany, I was like, why would Renisha get in a car with him? But you constantly remind me, like, stay in her story and don't try to protect her because this is her story. And like, it was a really great lesson that I needed as an actor, because I didn't even know that instinctively that's what I was trying to do with my character, was like protect her and create that misunderstanding in my mind in order to do so.
Mhm. Shatara, you to talk about like the set, the environment of the film, watching Test Pattern, it's such a assured debut feature, and it's everything. It feels so deliberate, and you really know like what story you wanted to tell and how to tell it. Can you tell us a bit about your prior experiences, on set, sort of gave you that confidence in stepping into this role, and really sort of creating something so beautiful?
Yeah, I I was really lucky to not only work for a director, but a director that actually um, wanted me to learn, um,
Hmm.
put me in an environment where I could absorb a lot of stuff. And related to that, but I think most important is that, the film I worked on was The Lost City of Z, which was at the time James Gray's most, ambitious and arduous film to date. And it was really important for me to watch a director I respected, who I already knew was very good, push himself. And it showed me what was possible.
Hmm.
And even though I didn't have the same kind of like, financial backing and my team wasn't as big, I knew what I could like actually kind of like keep pushing for. So yeah, I just think that it just raised the bar for me in that way. And so I kind of absorbed a lot on that set and then took it home, and then started making short films and building my way to making a feature. Um, Something that I always felt very insecure about, when I was younger and I was avoiding admitting that I was a director or that I wanted to be a director, was that I felt like I didn't have any handle the technical experience. That wasn't true, but I just didn't know what that looked like, And when I started directing shorts, I was giving myself like technical challenges. So, my first short, I tried my best to avoid dialogue altogether, to really play around with complicated camera moves, to, push myself visually, so I could really start using that aspect as another element of my toolkit that I can use to express the larger ideas and themes that I have. The last project that I did before Test Pattern was a kind of music video project with Amani Starnes, who plays Nurse Peg in the movie, where I just kind of pitched her this really ambitious, like Hitchcock, like homage to Vertigo, where I straight up, tried to like replicate actual scenes and sets and everything else. And, and we shot it on 35 millimeter and, really tried to be as true to that, the actual project or that film as we possibly could. It was for my, own, experience and need to challenge myself more than anything else. But what's also really great is that the team that I worked with on that music video was the team that I worked with on Test Pattern. So we'd kind of had a shorthand by the time we got to Test Pattern because we'd spent so much time together working on this other thing. And I do think that also contributes to my ability to kind of like, keep pushing the film further. So I'm grateful for having those folks, so close with me at that time.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from the audience. Aviva is dying to know, it's about the ending. If you sort of envisioned the couple making it out of the situation, finding happiness together again one day, the ending, she also wants to know, what do you think about whether the rapist, is brought to justice?
Oh, those are like 3 questions. I'll answer them all. The first, the ending is ambiguous intentionally. And I think that I have a different opinion about what happens to them. The way that we ended up framing that shot had a lot to do with the kind of like game time huddle conversation I had separately with Will and Brittany. I asked them both what they thought happened to Evan and Renisha, and they had the opposite answer. So when I heard that, I ran back and told, Ludovica, the cinematographer, okay, they're not on the same page about what's going to happen now. And she was like, okay, great. And then we kind of like, set the frames from there. And I think that's great, that they're not on the same page. And in my envisioning of, Evan and Renisha at that point, I didn't think that they were on the same page. So that helped me kind of communicate this, ambiguous and perhaps damning, sentence on them. But I think it still remains to be seen, right? I think that there are things that Evan could do that would make this better. But I shouldn't say the onus is on Evan, but I kind of think it is, but that's my opinion. The second thing about, Mike being brought to justice, I think that's a tricky one because I think that, in a lot of like date rape type scenarios, which we'll consider this as one, you do know the person. Renisha met him that night. She has his name. She, interacted with him. He drove her, back to Amber's. Like, it's not like, he found her in a dark corner and then ran away. Like, he's a person. So in a lot of ways, Renisha can confront him whenever she wants to. It's up to her if she wants to do that. And I mean, like, that's not really the point either. I think on a greater level, it's not the point because Renisha didn't want to go through any of this at all. If you remember, she wanted to go home. And she kept saying that she wanted to go home. So I don't know, when I think about, if the rape kit, gets tested or not, or if, the cops find this guy, or if Mike is brought to justice, all of that is kind of in the background because it's not really the point right now. The point is Renisha didn't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the third question. Maybe I made that up, but.
Oh, it's about the rapist being brought to justice.
Yeah.
But I guess you answered that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting question from Heart Rock 23. My favorite Heart Rock. Shatara, at what point of your process did you come up with the title of the film, Test Pattern?
Very late, very, 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 very late. You know, I would have happily called it that project that I don't know what to call it. And so then I just kind of slapped on the title American Woman for a long time. It was never the right title, never the right title. And yet I just kind of couldn't not say it didn't have a title. And thankfully, at the time, another film, I think it was a Simi Chalice film, was coming out called American Woman. And so we had to change it anyway, which I was so happy for. But it made it, I was stressed, man. This is like summer of 2018. And I was like, I do not know what to call this movie. And I spent a lot of time just kind of talking about my intent for it. And as I did that, the title became very clear to me. But yeah, it took forever.
I guess one question I just want to ask the three of you as we're nearing the end of this is what did you learn from this experience that you sort of didn't know before? And what do you hope that you've communicated to audiences, either through your writing and direction or Brittany and Will, your performances and sort of vulnerability on screen?
I'll answer.
I'll go. We'll go.
You go, Will. Yes.
All right, fair. Gosh, I mean, I learned a lot. I was thinking earlier, you know, people talk about creating art feeling like childbirth, and I do not know what childbirth feels like, and I will never know what childbirth feels like. But this was a deeply painful and joyful and like felt like a life-giving experience making this thing. And I think that had a lot to do with I think, you know, some of the lessons I learned are lessons that I hope Evan learns, that are like, you know, learning to be wrong and learning to be open to being taught, and learning to listen and take a back seat, which I think ultimately can allow people to become, it can allow artists to become better artists and people to become better people. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I think for me, wow. Well, one, it definitely opened me up to my own trauma that I didn't move past yet. I just kind of like swept under the rug. And so when this came to me, and going back to what Shatara said at the table, I think that was the moment of realizing like, oh shit, oh, this is kind of like what you've been through. And that wasn't easy to shine a light on for me. And I don't think I would have like even shined a light on it for myself if it wasn't for this film. So it really made me address my own like trauma and get through. I definitely got a therapist after this film because I was like, oh, I got some things I need to unpack and work through, you know. But and also like it just working on this film really just, it was so, I use the word magical a lot, but I also want to use the word like divine, like just a lot of what went on while we were filming. And then like I would tell Shatara, like I feel like I'm getting these messages about things, and it was just wild. And working with Will, and he's such a giving actor, and it's just like it just made me realize like as an actor, you just want to give, you know. And I love working with everyone on the set. I love how everyone like challenged me, made me see myself in different ways, and like everything that I just learned from them and I just learned so much. I just learned a lot on this, even after we wrapped, just kept learning. I'm still learning even now. Like, I had no expectations, and it's just like I'm still learning so much through this film that came to me 3 years ago. So
I think for me, it's a couple of things. It's embracing softness, which is something that I think structurally on a film set doesn't really have a place. And I am a naturally soft, like I like sitting in the softness. I guess that's where the nurture. I was very surprised when you said that, Brittany, because I think it's an element of my personality that I try to like really like press down when I'm in that kind of like, I don't know, structure on a film set where, you know, I'm supposed to, you know, command and tell people what to do, but that just feels very discordant for me. So I was fighting a lot with my like just natural instincts to kind of embrace and be really vulnerable with kind of, you know, pushing something. And yeah, this just taught me the virtue of it, because every time I embraced my instinct to do that, really, really, really special things came out. And when I kind of defaulted to, I think, the way that your typical film set works, it was always a mess. And so it was such a good lesson to like remind me, like, you know, again, white men don't be doing it the right way, hardly ever. But so yeah, embracing softness.
All right. Well, thank you so much to all of you for being here. Thank you, Shatara, for, you know, letting me be a part of this. It's been so great to see this journey for you. And Test Pattern, if you're watching this, you've seen it, but, you know, go watch it again. Go tell other people to go watch it at coolidge.org/virtual.
Sorry.
Yeah.